Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We'll be speaking for the next hour or so about two master's programs offered by the IIHS University. The first one is the MS in Urban Infrastructure and Economic Development, and the second one is the MA in Urban Studies and Urban Practice. I am Shriya Anand. I am the Associate Dean of the School of Economic Development at IIHS and involved with both these programs. And I'll invite Dr. Sudeshna Mitra and Dr. Divya Ravindranath to introduce themselves, to speak a little bit about their work, their research trajectories, as well as their teaching in these master's programs. So we'll start with Sudeshna.
Thank you so much, Shriya. And good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Looking forward to, telling you about the course and also getting your questions at the end of it. So very briefly about myself, I am also part of the School of Economic Development. I co-anchor the school along with Shriya, and I'm also faculty as a part of the IIHS University. I will be teaching as a part of both these master's programs that we're talking about today. I started with planning as my basic training. But always, even as a part of when I was doing my bachelor's in planning, very interested in economic development questions. Then I spent sort of my first part of my professional career working on government advisory, looking at basically economic and infrastructure projects that were being taken up by various states across India. This was the moment after liberalization. So many things, how things had been done, how state governments were working on these things was changing very fast. So I gained experience as a part of that, industrial parks, special economic zones, infrastructure corridors, those kinds of projects. But also in the practice world, you learn a lot, but things go very quickly. So then I decided I wanted to do a PhD so that I could think about many of the things that I had experienced. I could think about things like economic inclusion. How do we make this economic development story open to more people, like who's sitting at the table and who is not? How do we think about sustainability, not just in terms of monetary terms, but a lot of non-monetary terms? And so now what I teach, my entry point is through land and real estate, and the politics around that, public-private partnerships, negotiations, contestations around that. But looking at this economic development question from there. So I will be teaching courses on planning, on land, on finance, urban economic systems like food systems, etc. So in brief, these are my interests, and this is kind of my trajectory. Divya.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Divya Ravindranath. I'm at the School of Human Development at the IIHS University, and my work is basically on social protection, gender, looking at women's work, both paid and unpaid work, and a lot of recent work has been on care infrastructure. Over the years, I have got degrees in a master's and a PhD in social work, so coming a lot from sort of thinking about the world through practice, but increasingly also sort of tying that back to theory and to the way we conceptualize things thematically and conceptually in the academia. At the university, I teach the master's student in the first year. I teach a course on social and human development, where we look a lot at questions of identity, inequality, and look at it from various lenses. Talk about power. We talk about it from the economic lens, from the social and cultural lens. That's the first year. And I also teach a course on ethnographic methods. And later on, I also do a course on advanced ethnographic methods. And through my work and also the teaching, I've been really interested in thinking about methods more creatively. So for the kind of fieldwork that we need to do, say, in the Global South, and for the kinds of questions that we ask in the Global South, what kind of methods do we need? And how do we sort of, think on our feet, be a little bit more exploratory, and sort of think about these questions and methods a little bit more carefully from location, then think of it sort of as what is described in a textbook. So that's what I do at IIHS.
Thank you so much, both of you. So we'll get right into the details of the master's programs now. I'll start with Sudeshna. Sudeshna, if you could speak about the structure of the MS UEID, the MS in Urban Infrastructure and Economic Development. If you could speak about, what all the program covers, how it's structured, and some of those details.
Thank you, Shriya. So, just kind of, setting the context for the program a little bit. Many of us were, teaching as a part of this master's in urban economic and infrastructure development, are coming from this kind of background that I, spoke about in terms of my own personal case. But many faculty in this program share that trajectory, that we have, professional experience of working on these questions. We've worked on advisory roles, we've worked on the ground, we've worked with different kinds of public-private stakeholders. And we realized through that work experience and through the research that we have been doing on many kinds of topics, from livelihood, land, urban finance, all these kinds of topics, infrastructure systems, is that sometimes our curriculums are a little bit more abstracted from what is happening on the ground, what kinds of challenges are happening. And we wanted to build this curriculum for this Masters in Urban Economic Development, Infrastructure Development, to take this kind of a very practical approach. That how do you, we're sitting in this moment where India is now by far the most populous country in the world with 1.47 billion people. We are the fourth largest economy in the world. But the questions that whether the right kind of jobs are getting created, where are they getting created? Is it only the large cities? Is it the small cities part of the story? Are the infrastructure keeping up, not only to kind of support the kind of economic development, economic transitions, economic change that is happening at all scales? Are our systems, institutions, governance systems able to keep up with this? But also in terms of what is the quality of life that we are making available? What is the infrastructure that is available for the well-being of people? So the program is kind of taking a very practical approach to not talk about economics or infrastructure in abstracted, theoretical and conceptual ways, although we do that as well. We create a vocabulary for that. But it is about how do you translate that onto the ground, not talk about them just as concepts, but think about them in terms of people, in terms of places, in terms of locations, in terms of institutions. Bring in questions of environmental sustainability, bring in questions of social equity when we are thinking about economic infrastructure development. So this is sort of the idea behind the design of the curriculum. Now, how we do it is the first 2 terms, we have a 2-year program. Each year has 3 terms. So it's a trimester kind of a system. In the first 2 terms, we have 5 master's programs, and we actually have all our master's students, study together for the first 2 terms, developing a foundation and, vocabulary which is interdisciplinary in nature and brings together all these different kinds of aspects: infrastructure, economy, climate, sustainability, the social identity, all those kinds of questions together. Then in the 3rd term, which is the last term of the first year, each master's program, so including MSUID, has a foundational set of courses that we will teach. So urban and regional economic development, infrastructure services, like what is the vocabulary? So all the students in the Masters of Urban Economic and Infrastructure Development will take those foundational courses. Then when they go into the 2nd year and the 4th and the 5th term, they take a number of electives, and I'm happy to kind of go through some examples of it, for example. So they do land management and planning, they do modes of urban practice, economics and financing of infrastructure and services, the digital economy, work, labor, and informality, managing India's urban transitions in terms of plans, policies, and the long, enterprise development, social entrepreneurship. There are many things over here. But basically, they take a wide range of electives over the 4th and the 5th term. And then in the 6th term, they go to their exit project, which may be an internship if they're looking at joining the workplace, practice side of things, or they can do a dissertation as well, right? So that's kind of the exit project. So that gives them another chance to sort of, take their work back and apply it to their area of interest. So broadly, that's the kind of structure that we have over 2 years. And yeah.
Thanks, Sudeshna. Divya, I'll request you to speak to the MA USUP, the Urban Studies and Urban Practice. If you could speak about what the program covers and how the program is structured.
Yeah. So basically, the MA USP is sort of a very interdisciplinary program. So we are thinking of it as a place where a lot of people who are interested in urban studies but don't exactly know what their specialization is already. So it's a great place for those who are still navigating the space or trying to explore different sectors and find their space within urban studies. One of the interesting things about the course is that also because it's interdisciplinary, various disciplinary approaches are also being integrated into the course. So we welcome everybody, say from humanities and cultural studies, which they don't typically think of this as urban studies as being a home for them, right? But we say that a lot in the urban can also be known through these disciplines. Like Sudeshna said, the first year, a lot of the courses are going to be common for all the master's programs. So along with all the other master students, you'll be in the same classrooms talking about, say, the economy or planning and identity and social and human development and so on. But as you move on to the third term, that is where the specialization sort of comes up for each of these strands. So that's where we are going to have a policy studio, a theory studio, and a practice studio in the electives where you think very deeply about urban questions. The reason that we've kept it sort of more open ended is because we want to think of this course as a place where students learn how to be systems integrators. So it's not just one sector or it's not one specialization, but actually being able to think across different sectors. So you specialize eventually in one particular sector that you may be interested in as your exit, as you exit the program. But you also have the opportunity to look at various sectors and what does it mean to study the urban from all of these different sectors, right? And especially given the global south focus, how do we think of interdisciplinary urban theory and methods, and also think about how does one integrate theory, program, policy, and practice, given the context within which our urban areas are sort of transitioning, both rural to urban transition, but also the size of our urbanization changing over the next few years. Broadly, that's sort of the aim of the program. And after the first year, you get to sort of specialize in the second year in your program. And we have a very interesting set of courses, and I'll just sort of read a tentative list. We have things like thinking about affordable housing policy. You can think about national urban missions. For those who are from cultural studies and humanities, we have course on cities and we have a course on literature in the city and cinema in the city. But also looking at monitoring and evaluation. What does it feel like to work from the government, with the government, or work with the private sector or the development sector, right? So the idea is to give you an opportunity to explore the breadth of all these sectors, and the kinds of themes that you could be picking up if you're working in the broad field of urban studies.
Thank you, both of you. I know many of you attending have sort of written in with some questions in advance, and we know that you'd like to hear specifically more about the distinction between these two programs, what is unique to each program, and which one you should opt for if you're thinking of applying. So I'll request both of you to comment on this. And Sudeshna, perhaps if you could comment more on what is distinct about the UEID program, and Divya, if you could comment more on what is unique and specific about the USUP program.
Sure. Thank you, Shriya. So I mean, I think, like I said before, that the program is really set. The Masters in Science in urban economic and infrastructure development is really looking at this moment where there is the country is going through a huge economic transition as part of the global economy, and infrastructure systems have to develop, to change, they have to modify, they have to keep up. We have to anticipate that. So if you're interested in these kinds of questions, right, like how do you become part of the process of thinking about these questions? What methods do you need to plan, anticipate, in a very practical sort of a way, be part of the process, be part of institutions, be a part of organizations, taking on these questions of economy and infrastructure at different levels, both on the public side and the private side. And also, looking at these not necessarily in a very mechanistic sort of a way, that how do we create more jobs? It's not a quantity problem. It is a quantity problem. But we're also interested and are worried about the quality of these things, right? Like, what is the kind of urban future are we walking into? Is it an urban future in which jobs will be created in a way that is an inclusive? Are we going to create an economic development story, a trajectory that is also going to be sustainable, from a climate perspective, from a resource extraction kind of a perspective? What do we do with pollution? So if you're looking at, if you're worried about the economy and infrastructure challenges that you're seeing, that you're facing in the place that you live in, when you want to be part of that process and you want to learn how to do it, this is the program for it. And I think the entry points can be many things. You could be interested in, for example, the land part of this story. Okay, or you could be interested in sort of looking at it from employment kind of a perspective, or you could be interested in sort of saying, okay, how do I think about infrastructure services? You may be interested in the digital sort of economy, the platform economy that's emerging, right? Like, that's the kind of work that you want to look at. You're interested in sort of saying that, okay, I want to know how the money flows through all for this. How do we think about budgets? How do we think about governance on all of these things? So the entry points are all of these different ways that you can enter it. And like I said, these are all the kind of themes that come across this thing. But I would say that it's not so much about what discipline you come from. It's not that you have to have an economics discipline or you have to have some sort of, a background in these kinds of things. What you can be from any background. But what's really kind of this thing is that you have to, like, we want to curate a class where people are worried and want to do something. And that could be a whole range of things that you want to be part of that solution. You also may be somebody who wants to do more research in this area, right? So these are the kind of folks, like something that ties this group kind of together, this kind of concern. Maybe you have worked in the development sector, but now on these kinds of issues, but would want to have sort of how to do it more systematically. You want to upgrade your skills, your methodological skills, etc. So those kinds of things, if you want to do that, then again, this is the kind of program for that. So so that's the kind of profile of people, like the program, what the program is trying to do, and the kind of profile of people that we are also looking for.
I think a lot of what Sudeshna said holds true even for the MUSP, but sort of the distinguishing factor between the two courses is that in the MUSP, the students will have an opportunity to actually think through what are their interests. So it's not like you enter with the interest, but through the program, you find out what your interest is. It is truly interdisciplinary in that sense. And the idea is to, emphasize on systems thinking, to think about equity, sustainability, and also think about applied learning. What does it mean to do urban studies and practice from the global south? So a lot of our examples in the classroom, a lot of our own, research work that we do at IIHS sort of makes it to the classroom in terms of cases where we look at how we, address real urban challenges in the country today. It is also very place-based and field-driven learning. So that's the core emphasis in the program. In the first year, there are, of course, courses that they take together with other specializations. But even in the second year, the students will have the opportunity to either sort of, broaden their horizon, pick different kinds of electives and still continue to experiment in the second year, or go more in depth in particular sectors that they are interested in. And to enable that, the MUSP students can actually take electives from across the various programs that are there at IIHS. So, whether that's sustainability science and practice or the Masters in Climate Change Science and Practice, the UEID, of course, the way Sudeshna has explained. So they will have the opportunity to then pick from each of these different, courses, the kinds of electives that these different programs actually offer. The idea is to allow you to explore the various challenges that, the urban areas in in the Global South encounter, and then find your own sort of portfolio that you can build for yourself as you leave IIHS, right? So it's not one specialization, but sort of trying to understand all of it bit by bit, and find a way that either you work very sectorally on one thing at the end of it, or maybe you're going to be good at everything little by little. And when you leave IIHS, then you're able to get the big picture across these different sectors. So the idea is to keep it open-ended, and this is perhaps a good place for those who are still trying to find their feet or still trying to understand what urban studies really is about, right? So especially those kinds of disciplines that don't think of urban studies naturally, but actually once you come here, you realize that there's a lot you can do, given even if your discipline is completely different from what we are trying to teach in the classroom. So the point is really to keep it open and allow you to find your own trajectories through the course.
Thank you. So I think both of you have also started to touch upon who should be applying for these programs. But if I'll request both of you to do a quick round on, what we are looking for in an applicant to this program. And the second part of it is, what do career trajectories after the program look like? So if both of you could respond to that.
Sure. So, like I sort of started saying that this is a very interdisciplinary kind of a program. And that basically also means that we are looking for people from across different disciplinary trainings to come into the program as well. And the way that we accommodate and, the way that we have designed the curriculum is, like I mentioned, that the first 2 terms is about creating a common vocabulary. You get basic methods, courses, etc. during the first 2 terms, which basically means that whatever disciplinary background you're coming from, you may know about a certain set of concepts, certain disciplinary methods that you're better at. But during the first 2 terms, you will know your own, but you will get pushed to learn other things, right? With a set of peer group, a cohort where everybody brings, their skill and their specialization and their knowledge from a different disciplinary perspective. And the idea in that first 2 term is for you to not only learn what the other methods are, but also to share space and to start working. Like we include, for example, a field-based learning, which comes in term 2, which we call practica, where you will have to have work within groups with people with different disciplinary backgrounds. And the idea that we're trying to push there, and this kind of holds across all the masters, all the 5 masters that we have at IIHS University, is that this is what real professional life looks like. When you go out and you're trying to work on housing questions or economic development questions or employment questions or any, you will encounter engineers, economists, sociologists, social work background people, anthropologists, all of these different management people, lawyers. And some of the reasons why, projects, like the kind of difficulties people face in their professional life, is that because conversations break down, because we have never learned about how to translate concerns across disciplinary boundaries, learn to listen and see that, okay, I know this, but there may be another perspective that adds more to it. Right? And in real life, these actual disciplinary backgrounds, boundaries don't exist. Real life comes at you. Even if it's a housing problem, you will have to think about the engineering part of the thing. You'll have to think about the design part. You'll have to think about finance. You have to think about what is the legal status of the land. Real life comes with all of these concerns. And so our idea is that whatever disciplinary background you're coming in from, you still have to learn how to talk and how to work with these disciplinary backgrounds and then go in towards your specialization of, say, in this case, economic and infrastructure development, right? So the kind of people we're looking at is, again, who are concerned about these questions, but can come from any disciplinary backgrounds. In terms of the work trajectories that can come out of this as well. Again, I mean, if you think about the contemporary moment, India is changing very, very quickly. And, most of the new, whatever sector we are talking about, there will be sort of this kind of a footprint on it, that how does India cope up with this kind of economic transitions? What are we thinking about in the terms of the infrastructure problems that are coming up, right? So what that means is that the government is going to reach out more and more, sort of come up with policies, programs, missions, new kind of projects in which there is going to be need for people who can plan for these things, who can anticipate for these things, who can, who have the methodological skills to bring these interdisciplinary problems together. There will be these jobs, a lot of, as you know, there are a lot of private consultancies are in this space working with the government as well. So these are private sector jobs, these are government kind of jobs. There will be lots of development sector jobs. There's a lot of civil society that is involved in these questions. They're all part of it as well. So those kinds of trajectories are also there. There are also people who may want to take, sort of go further into doing more research on this. They may want to be part of academia and teach the next generation of people how to take on these kinds of issues. So research and academic jobs are also part of the trajectory. But basically what I want to say is that this is the contemporary reality that we're looking at right now. And so the job opportunities are also across all of these sectors. And more of these kinds of positions will also start to open up, because, we are facing, like we're looking at absolutely a sort of a job crisis right now. We are looking at an infrastructure kind of a moment. So we need more and more professionals to be part of this story. So those are the kinds of opportunities that we're looking at, after the program.
I think for the MUSP also, we are looking at, admitting students who are coming from various disciplinary backgrounds. As I said before, perhaps a little bit of interest could also be for cultural studies and humanities students who perhaps don't fit into the other master's program, because this is sort of broader for them to also explore their own interests. Having said that, I'm glad Sudeshna talked about the practica, because both the practica as well as the exposure visits that we have inbuilt within the program are great places for the MUSP students to actually think about what their true interest in the urban is, both in terms of thematics, in terms of the sectoral, spaces that are available. And we do envision that our students will exit and, perhaps join the government, perhaps think about multilateral organizations, think tanks, also the development sector. But within the development sector too, there are many different kinds of organizations that are doing very interesting, work in the urban space today. So there are many different kinds of opportunities out there. But also those who are interested in pursuing research further. So, joining the academia and doing a PhD and so on. I think the point is to also sort of, find that balance between depth and breadth as an urban practitioner. So, when we say you're doing a, degree in urban studies and practice, it's really to say that you get a flavor of everything out there that makes our cities the way it is, but also think through, what does it mean pedagogically for us to train somebody in it? What does it mean to actually think through strategies and methods and sources of data to be able to understand these problems, but also think about it more propositionally, a bit more in the future, and think about how do you actually build career trajectories through all of these different kinds of urban questions. So both sort of the entry and the exit in that sense is a bit open-ended, where we allow the students to explore their own paths and figure out what is that exact, trajectory that they want to pick through as they move ahead in their career.
Thank you, both of you. Now I'll sort of encourage everyone to put, their questions into the Q&A box. I'll ask Sudeshna and Divya one last question, and then we'll move into the Q&A section of our discussion. So please feel free to start posting your questions already in the Q&A box. So one last thing I'd like to, just invite both of you to reflect on, which is how your experiences with teaching the current cohort of students has been. Just to share your open-ended reflections on this before we go into specific Q&A regarding both these programs.
Do you want to start us off, Divya?
Yes, I've had the opportunity to actually teach in 2 terms now. So, in the first term, I taught ethnographic research methods. And it's been a really interesting experience because when you're in an interdisciplinary classroom, some people immediately get the method, right? So, there are sociologists in the room who absolutely love ethnographic research methods. And then there are, folks who studied perhaps economics or planning or architecture. And then suddenly they're not sure what to do with this method. So it's really always exciting to sort of push them to think about methods as being, not discipline bound. The fact that methods can travel across discipline and need not be sort of defined by what they have been taught in their undergrad years, and sort of limit their methods and questions to that. So it's always interesting to teach ethnographic methods and tell people that, of course, your questions should, tell you what methods you should pick up, but your disciplines don't have to frame your questions. Your questions can also come from sort of observing the world outside. The practica is going to also be a great opportunity to think about some of these questions. In the second term, I'm teaching a course on social and human development. And this course basically looks at inequality, talks about power in society, but the sort of pedagogical choice that we have made is to think about it from the perspective of what the social world looks like, what society looks like, the economic pathways to think about it, and also to think about it from the point of view of culture and identity, because data is not just out there, but it's also something we embody, we experience in our everyday life. So when we talk about social and human development, we just don't have to look at the world outside, but sometimes it's our own experiences of how we experience the urban, or we think about society that we live in. And it's been really exciting to teach this course as well, because a lot of students are, from backgrounds where they've never thought about these questions of inequality or questions of power, actually. Again, to suggest that no discipline is without power. There is, everything is political and there is power in every discipline. But pedagogically, what does that mean for us in the classroom, right? How do we balance sort of the questions of gender and caste, and think about inequality in all its different forms in the society that we live in? I think this course is both challenging because there are people who've never talked about it or thought about it in their lives, but also exciting because it's the first time that somebody is actually thinking about this question, and you can always see those light bulbs going out in class saying, "Oh, this is what we've seen, but we just didn't have the vocabulary to talk about it," or "This is what we've seen, but didn't realize this is what we were talking about," right? So both these courses have sort of given very interesting perspectives to the class, and it's always exciting as a faculty to sort of engage with students on these questions, and you sort of push them to keep broadening their understanding of society in different ways.
Yeah, so sort of picking up from where Divya's left off. So it's been quite exciting to have this batch and this cohort in. It is an incredibly diverse cohort. We have people from all over the country. We have people representing pretty much every state in the country. Huge language diversity that we have in the classroom. We also have a very, very diverse disciplinary diversity, which makes for very interesting observations and examples that people bring up and talk about in class. Not just in class, but actually outside class. We do a lot of, all the faculty is, sort of meet students every week in something that we call office hours. And that gives a chance for students to also interact with faculty outside, sort of the confined classroom space, or, that kind of a performative space that is there, and just have open heart-to-heart kind of conversations as well about any kinds of issues they're facing or curiosities that they have. And so it's very interesting that this diversity of their backgrounds, life experiences, examples, the concerns that they have, makes for a very rich teaching and learning experience. It really sort of pushes us as faculty to not only teach from what we have learned in our lives and our experience and professional experience, but it also sort of makes us stop and sort of consider the questions that's coming at us, to realize that, where we might also have biases and limitations and, sort of ways in which we are thinking. So that's been a very interesting part of the experience that we have had. I'm part of this teaching of this course called The Perspectives on Planning and Economy, and this term. And actually, Shriya, who's taken on the role of asking us the questions in this session, but Shriya and I are teaching this course together, actually. And it's very exciting because this course is also putting together two aspects which constantly work together on the ground, but is never taught together. Right. So planning and economy, I mean, you will hear people say that leave it to the market, right? Like the invisible hand of the market will take care of our cities. We will have the absolute the best growth. And then you will have the other lobby, which will say, no, we need regulation. There's speculation in the market. We will have an inequitable society. Some people will get lots of benefits. Some people will be left out of the game. And in the way that our cities are sort of growing, some of the two disciplines that sort of going back and forth on these questions is sort of looking at it from an economic kind of a perspective, which is looking at the market, which is looking at all these different kinds of economic actors, economic institutions. But the other side is to look at it from a planning perspective, which is looking at land, which is looking at like how do we regulate what comes up, whether polluting industries can come up, whether other kinds of sectors can come up, how employment is generated, like all of those kinds of questions. Now, if you teach these things together, there is a very interesting tension that happens in classrooms all the time, and then it is sort of added in terms of how the students then ask us questions when we sort of put these two things together. So it's been quite interesting. I think we're just sort of also in the starting phase of it. Just like I said, that there's a whole trajectory, the whole learning curve that happens over the 2 years. I think we're still very much at the beginning of that learning curve. People are taking all these ideas, putting it into their practica. We'll see how they develop out over the next 2 years. But I, for one, am definitely very excited and very much looking forward to what this trajectory, like what we will learn out of the trajectory and what they will learn out of the trajectory as well.
All right, so we'll move to the Q&A now. I'll read out some of the questions and maybe direct them to both of you. So I'll start with one for Divya, which is someone who is a master's degree in development studies and is considering moving into urban studies and practice. How would this shift strengthen my academic profile and support my future studies or career? And I'll just take a couple of questions maybe. So Divya, this first one for you, and then Sudeshna, a couple for you, which is for someone who's interested in urban planning, transport planning, and policy development, which course would you recommend? And what are the career options outside India after MS in UEID? So we'll start with these and then we'll go to the next set of questions.
I think the transition from development studies to urban studies and practice is it's a smooth transition, right? Because a lot of what you understand in development theory and practice, we're going to now apply a global south or an urban perspective to it. So to actually think about what does informality look like? What does migration look like? Planning, one of the things that development studies doesn't focus on is thinking about spatial aspects of how our cities grow, or thinking about planning and what is the role that it plays in allowing people to live in the ways that they should be actually having a dignified life. So similar questions that we ask around work, a lot of my work has been on looking at women's work, paid work and unpaid work, informality, and thinking about care infrastructures within this. And to do that, we do have to look at something that is really grounded and just not theoretically what development looks like, but what does development actually look like in practice, right? So you could use different frameworks for it, but actually in the end be able to find out what does it translate into when you go into the field. So Practica is a great place to explore that. I also think that it allows you to go a bit more deeper into questions of inequality, of identity, and I think those things are taught a bit more on the surface in the undergrad years, and in the master's 2 years that you have, this is where you actually sort of get to do a deep dive at both sort of theory, practice, but also the policy and the political frameworks, the political economy rather, within which they sort of play out. So I do think it's a fairly good, smooth transition from development studies to urban studies.
To take on the second question, I think I would actually think that someone like you who's looking at urban planning, transport planning, policy development, The MSc in Urban Economic and Infrastructure Development sounds like a good fit for you. Because while these are all sort of entry points, urban planning, transport planning, and policy development, and these are areas of work, what I think this course will tell, take you further is in terms of like on the ground, how these things come together, right? And what kind of challenges, and it's not a smooth sailing at all. It may, on paper, it may seem like, okay, we should have urban planning and, mobility should be available to all kinds of different job opportunities. Policy should kind of facilitate it. It all sounds like there are possibilities of win-win situations. And a lot of times when, even when you're reading case studies about it or reading policy papers about it or reading this thing about it, some kinds of project briefs about it, it does sound like, it's that final trajectory. It's like how everything came together and now it all makes sense in retrofit, in, sort of retrospect. The problem is that when you're doing it on the ground, the equation is not so much about win-win. The equation is usually about trade-offs. How far do you go? Like what kind of economic development leads to what kind of employment opportunities? What kind of employment opportunities need what kind of land requirements? Those land requirements and those infrastructure requirements are leading to what kind of trade-offs in terms of different competing interests on the same resources, same locations, externality effects. Where is the waste getting dumped? Which are the flood prone areas? Are the poor people, sort of being forced to, go for rental arrangements of housing in those particular areas? Cities are not two-dimensional. Cities don't allow for win-win situations to just emerge. And the practice of it, once you kind of get into the professional field of all of this, the real learning is about how do you navigate those trade-offs? How do you make optimal decisions within data that may be incomplete, time that may not be enough, sort of lobbies that may be pushing for certain outcomes, but which there will be other kinds of lobbies. Like how do you make kind of the best possible situations? How do you bring more of, like, if you're looking at it as an engineering solution or you're looking at it as an economic solution, are there unintended consequences that are emerging, some kind of social outcomes that are emerging, which you didn't think about because you didn't problematize it? This is what the real thing looks like, right? So somebody who's interested in these particular topics, but if you want to take it forward from just looking at it just like areas of, disciplinary these things, and looking at like how does it translate on the ground? What are these trade-offs? What's the practice of it? I think that's what's going to come from this master's program, economic and infrastructure development. So I would recommend that that's something that you kind of that you look at that one. In terms of career options outside India, I mean, it's not that it's not there, right? Obviously, I mean, we have in the past also like had alumni and stuff, who have moved to other these things. But, these programs, I mean, I'll be quite honest about it and actually a bit specific about this as well, that we designed this program so that we are actually entering it from the perspective of what is required in terms of India's development trajectory, right? And all the kinds of challenges that we're facing. And, like I said, that we are the most populous country right now with the fourth largest economy in the world. A lot of the global challenges that are, being connected to the world, but a lot of those global challenges are also playing out here. And these programs are also designed that how can we have, train people and train, have brains that think about these problems, but also stay and sort of, be a part of the process of making everybody's life a little bit better as a part of this. Which is not to say that you cannot take these learnings. It's an incredibly complex classroom. India is a very complex classroom. Everything from social inequalities to economic inequalities to economic challenges, urban challenges, makes it a complex classroom. And therefore it travels, right? Like if you learn things here in India, I think many other places in the world have resonances or things that, in terms of how our borders are opening up, in terms of how knowledge is traveling, how academic work is traveling, and all of that. All those possibilities exist. But that said, I think we as faculty are quite interested in students who are interested in looking at this and being part of solutions that come out in the Indian context.
Thanks. So I'll take a few more questions. So there's one question on can students of social sciences apply for MSc programs and what type of funding opportunities are available? So absolutely, students not only of social sciences but from all disciplinary backgrounds are welcome to apply, are encouraged to apply. We have an interdisciplinary classroom, as Sudeshna and Divya have been speaking about. And in terms of funding opportunities, we have information available on the website. But what is important for you all to know is that we have need-based scholarships which are available for students to apply for. So along with your application form, you are also eligible to apply for funding opportunities for the master's programs. There are a couple of more questions about what suits people with coming from different disciplinary backgrounds. So there's one question where someone's asking that their undergraduate degrees in economics and master's is in criminology, and the other person is asking that their graduation was in BTech civil engineering and which program is a better fit for you. So I'll give a brief response, but invite the other two to also respond if they'd like to. For us, it's not your background disciplinary training is not a direct match to which masters you should apply for, but rather the interests that you have in what kind of questions you want to pursue. And so whether, if you want a more open-ended exploration of the urban, then the USUP program might be more suitable. But if you're specifically interested in applying your background and training to questions of infrastructure, to questions of economic development, then the UEID is a better program for you, right? So regardless of whether your background training is in economics or in civil engineering or in planning or any other related discipline, I would say that the way in which you should decide or choose the master's program is by reading the description of the kind of courses which are on offer, seeing which ones actually spark your interest, seeing where you want your career trajectory to take you. I think those would be the ways in which you should make your decision on which master's programs to apply for. If either of you would like to add anything on that.
The only thing I want to add is that, this thing, I want to highlight the fact that this is an opportunity. And this opportunity, of sort of not letting your disciplinary training so far hold you, like let that be a barrier to what you want to do next, right? Like this is one of the few opportunities in India that there is to really sort of explore beyond, somebody else has decided that this is the disciplinary trajectory. If you have done sociology, you can only do this, you can only do this, you can only do this. It's one of those universities where you are allowed to explore and move beyond that trajectory that has been written by somebody else, right? So this is something that I want to tell everybody, that it's not so much about the past. It is like, Shriya said, where is your curiosity? What are the things that you resonate to? What do you want to do? Ask yourself, an honest question. Where do I want to go? What do I want to do? Like if you're not being held back by some, sort of presupposed idea of disciplinary trajectory, then which area of work pulls you? What do you want to be part of, right? And so pick the masters that speaks to the future trajectory much more than your past trajectory, right? So, and again, to stress, there are not that many universities in India right now which allow you to do this, right? So here is a very good opportunity to pay attention to in that sense.
We have one more question on how to prepare their SOP, what we are really looking for. I think a nice moment to reflect on what we are really looking for in the essays and in the application.
I think as people who look at lots of applications, my personal request would be to tell us who you are in your application. Let us know a little bit about you. It's really nice to read applications where the person is a bit reflective about their own trajectory so far and what they sort of think about the world ahead of them. So we are not asking you to and nothing is set in stone, right? We are not saying just because you said you're interested in research, we are going to hold you to it in the next 2 years. Of course, the whole idea is to help you explore the broad sort of course outlines that we have. But having said that, a little bit about who you are as a person. What are the life circumstances through which you have thought about the urban, right? Because we all have a favorite story, we have a favorite anecdote, either from our own times or from the times of our parents and grandparents, where they reflected in nostalgia about the urban and then are quickly commenting about how the urban is changing, or you're personally experiencing the urban now, and how it's changing over a period of time. And also, we would like to see a little bit more about why do you think being in an interdisciplinary classroom is useful for you, right? So, I mean, we've already explained a lot about why it's useful, but for you personally, like what excites you about being in interdisciplinary classroom? So, suppose you're a sociologist, why are you choosing to come to MUSP, where you're going to actually meet people who are not like you, who don't think like you, who don't have the same questions like you? Does it make you feel excited or does it overwhelm you, right? Even if it is overwhelming you, tell us why you think it's overwhelming, because sometimes there's always the fear of the other discipline, of the vocabulary that other disciplines throw at you. So the whole point I'm trying to make is that through your applications we want to get to know you better. So the less generic it is, the better. When I'm reading an application, suppose Sudeshna or Shriya have applied, then I want to know who they are as individuals and what are their stories, and not 5 bullet points on what their broad observations about the world are, but tell us about what are your particular observations, and be reflective. Tell us what is exciting, what scares you, what you're looking forward to. The more we get to know you, the better it is through the application process.
Yeah, I also want to really kind of stress that, because I feel like a lot of places admissions are, expecting that your English has to be, shiny and full of buzzwords that are doing the contemporary rounds and stuff like that. And unfortunately, what that also means that many people end up thinking that a generic essay generated via AI will get them through the door, whereas sort of a more broken essay, but which is more honest about your own trajectory, talks about your own story, talks about questions that you don't have answers to, curiosities that you want to explore, but may also be sort of afraid to say that, okay, I don't know if there is a work life which will allow me to ask these questions. Like, is this a practical question, or am I being naive? Am I being somebody who's just worried about the world, but I don't know how to take this forward? The thing that we want to really assure you is that the broken essay, incomplete thoughts, but genuine questions, will get you through the door much more than some slick AI generated, answer, which, honestly, after we have read the second AI generated answer, we know the next 100 AI generated answers, because they are the same. There's no human soul in there. And it's very easy to tell after you've been teaching for a while, after you've been around for a while. So please don't do that. Be yourself, whatever version that takes in the written form. That's much more likely to get our interest, make us want to talk to you, take you through the interview round, where we will, face to face have conversations with you and get to know you a little bit better. So that's, I would say, a more successful essay.
Thank you. So I wanted to say thank you to everyone. We're out of time. So thank you to all of you who joined. Thank you for your questions and your engagement. And, a big thank you to both Sudeshna and Divya for talking us through all the details of these two programs. Please continue to engage with us through the website, through our social media handles. And feel free to reach out via email, via social media if you have any follow-up questions regarding both these programs. And I think the link to the application form is in the chat box. So please do, visit. Please do stay on top of the dates. And so thank you very much for joining.
Thank
And
you,
thank you,
Shriya.
Shreya.
Thank you, Sudeshna. Thank you, Divya. Folks, that our next webinar is on MAM Human Development Policy and Practice on 5th of February. So please do register for those. We do have city walks happening in February. We also have open days in Bangalore and Delhi. All of those links are on our events page. I've shared that. I've shared the prospectus, the general FAQs, and sample questions. So if you have any other queries, please do write to us and we're available to answer them. Thank you so much.